All right. I think we're recording. I didn't get the little sound. Is my volume off? Let me just make sure here. Ah, that's why. There we go. All right. Bonnie, I'm going to unmute you just for a second to make sure I can hear. Say something.
Hello.
Hey,
Can you
great.
hear?
Thank
All
you.
right.
Perfect. Okay. So, welcome everyone to this live alumni practitioner in training panel. It's a mouthful. Say that 10 times fast. So for those here live, welcome. For those here on the recording, welcome. I'm just going to provide a little context before we just dive in because we have a lot to cover. There's a lot of folks that I want to hear from today. My name is Irene, because you might be watching this on YouTube, and I am the founder of something called Smartbody SmartMind, also known as SBSM. And we've been running this course, this program, this curriculum, my team and I, for many, many, many years. I think like 2014-ish. And this fall, 2023, it will be the 14th time we've run this program. And today I am joined with 9 of my alumni who have been with me a little longer and who have dove in, is that a word? Who have dived into this work quite a bit with me. And over the last year, I'm just going to provide the context. I have been in research and development of creating a professional teacher training thing. We're still trying to figure out what it is. And in terms of the language. And this is in service of me teaching, mentoring, and us getting more amazing practitioners out there who are what I call scientuitive trained. That's a new word. We could pop it in the chat. It's a word I came up with back in 2001, way before I got into any Feldenkrais or SE or any of the training. It's just something that literally, similar to Peter Levine, when he had the epiphany of the whole idea of waking the tiger. Some of you may not know this. So here's a bit of history. He had a dream about a tiger and it running, and he calls it, he was given a gift from the gods, you know, maybe it was his own gift. But for me, that word scientuitive landed one day when I was doing my master's degree. So scientuitive practitioner, scientuitive educator, that's what we've been playing with. And then these lovely folk joined me for what we were calling a beta module. There were 2 cohorts. So some of you were in the first cohort, some of you are in the second cohort, and some of you have never met. So this is really fun and cool. And so these lovely, brave souls came in and learned with me over about 8 to 12 weeks. And we did some fun things and we all got challenged. I was challenged too in good ways. And the one thing I'll say is it was so cool to see their regulation, their understanding of the material, their development just explode in a good way because they had the foundations of Smartbody SmartMind on board. The reason why this is important for me, if someone wants to become a practitioner under my scope, that we go through Smartbody SmartMind and through it intensively, probably a few times at least, is when you are more solid and regulated in your system, and I hope my panelists talk about this, the ability to work with others is just that much easier because you're not worried about your own stuff. You're not worried about your own regulation. You're just showing up to be of service to the person or the group you're working with. Some of these panelists were already in the field of health and healing and helping, others not. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to literally go through the list in the way that I have it on my paper, and I'll just call a name. And I'd love for you to say who you are. Feel free to say where you are in the world. And when you got into Smartbody SmartMind, how much this work has shifted for you, share what you want to share, a little bit of a shift in your own physiology, and then what it's been like to learn at this different level, this practitioner level, how it's been different. So, there's no script that you have to follow. Go with your gut, follow your impulse, because you all know how to do that. And let's share with the folks that are here. So Amy, you're top of the list.
Hello, my name is Amy Toe. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan in the USA. I first did Smartbody SmartMind the first session in 2020. I signed up like 2 days before everything shut down in Michigan here, which ended up being really great timing in its own special way. And it's hard to pick one thing, I think, because honestly, everything has shifted. Um, Early on, I think the things that shifted, I think I noticed were relationships. Like my husband and I, our relationship shifted in such giant ways. So that's probably one of the first things I noticed. But every time that I've done another round of SBSM, more things have shifted in really big ways. So when I did the beta training, I don't think I had, I don't know what I was, I don't think I had anything I was expecting. I just was like, how interesting. So I showed up and then still a lot more things just got a lot more settled and firm, and um it, it would show up in places that it wasn't before. So not that it was necessarily all new things, but I would be surprised where I would be like, oh, that's showing up in all these nice places. So it was, I really liked it.
Thanks, Amy. And just to give people an idea, what do you do now? What did you used to do? What are you wanting to do with this work?
Sure. So I am a pediatrician that did a lot of work international in Haiti, um, consistently with the same places. And then I had a whole bunch of things happen in my own life. A lot of traumas happened in my own life. And so then that couldn't really happen very easily. So I then added on being a life coach because I had a lot of time on my hands and it seemed like no matter what, it would be helpful. Um, and so now I am kind of a combination of those things.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next up is Samantha.
Hi, so nice to see everybody again. Hi guys, hi. I met Smartbody SmartMind. Actually, I met 21 Day Tune Up. First of all, I was in a real mess. I really was in a mess. It was 2018 in October, and all my life I've been sick. But in October 2018, I'd been diagnosed and suffering with for a few years chronic cluster headaches, which were just horrendous, chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic body pain syndrome, and then what was diagnosed as chronic PTSD, which I wasn't aware of. And on this special day in October 2018, I received a phone call, and from that phone call, I learned that my home was financially safe and my job was financially safe. And then this really weird thing happened in the evening. About 7 people all in a row told me that they loved me and they were so grateful I was in their life. And it felt like they'd all decided to do this, but they hadn't. It was just spontaneous. And I went back to my room and I just broke down crying because I felt so safe and I felt so loved. And the crying got worse and my system got worse and I just broke down and I just stopped functioning. I just couldn't function in daily life anymore. And there was talks from the doctors about going to a trauma clinic to be admitted. I really didn't want to do this. And then they were saying, well, you have to do something. And I remembered about 13 years earlier, a really dear friend of mine had been doing some trauma work with a nice Canadian lady online. And she had some recordings that she kept receiving from this nice Canadian lady. And she had asked me to listen to them with her. And I listened to them with her. And I was like, this lady's got a nice voice, but this is not for me. I'm not interested in this trauma work. So that was 13 years earlier. I remembered about this and I thought, oh, maybe this would help me now. So I contacted my friend. She sent me these links to Irene Lyon. And it was you, Irene, that she was working with. And So I started with 21-day nervous system tune-up, but it was too much for me. I just couldn't do it. And the reason was that I just couldn't feel my body. I just couldn't feel in my body at all. It had been a very unsafe place for me to be. But I did found 4 steps to calm overwhelm. So this states for about 4 to 5 months, all I did day and night, because I was too frightened to leave my room. I sat with my feet in probably a too hot bowl of water, just with my feet on the floor in this bowl of water, trying to do 4 steps to calm overwhelm. And something started to shift. So then I did 21-day tune-up. My friend had told me about Smartbody SmartMind. She was in the very first round, and she had really encouraged me. She was like, if you can be well enough by March, do Smartbody SmartMind. So I was determined. I just felt like this was what I needed to do. So I did Smartbody SmartMind. Didn't fully complete it that year. Then was so lucky to do 3 pods with Seth, which was group trauma work. So that was about 9 months. And I was extremely lucky to work with Seth one-on-one for a couple of years. And then after doing Smartbody SmartMind again, I joined the beta training. I would say that Smartbody SmartMind, this gave me the tools to literally become your own medicine. Like, this slogan for me is absolutely what Smartbody SmartMind does: become your own medicine. And I was trying to think of a few examples, because now it's so second nature that it's quite difficult to sort of think of it. And so I remembered a couple of months ago, I got up in the night for a quick pee, and I stumbled and I cut my eyebrow very deeply on my door handle, and blood was just gushing out of my eyebrow. And my colleague heard me scream and came out of his room, and he was like, oh, we have to get you to hospital. And then I thought, okay, hang on a second, sit on the floor, use the tools, feel the feels, feel your butt on the floor. And as my heart calmed down, the blood stopped. And he had got dressed. He came back into the bathroom and he looked at me and he went, what happened? And I said, I felt my butt on the floor. And he was like, huh? I was like, I used the nervous system tools that I'd learned to calm my system down. The blood stopped pumping. I didn't need stitches. I did go and get some little strips from the chemist, and it healed fantastically, really. Even the scar, like, I was just amazed. And I mean, another massive thing that came out of Smartbody SmartMind was following impulses. I mean, I really think this is the foundation of really being able to learn to release the trauma from your system. And Irene, if I hadn't have learned to follow my impulses, I would not be alive today. Last year, I was driving down a road near where I live. I'd been down this road so many times before in my life. Suddenly, I had the feeling, slam the brakes on. I had no idea why. I slammed my brakes on. Literally, a second later, an old farmhouse was demolished in front of me, and it fell across the road, and it completely would have smashed me. Then there's all this nice smoke from the rubble, and this guy appears and walks out from behind a bush in like high-vis suit, doing up his flies. He'd clearly just disappeared for a pee-pee, not was in the right place at the right time to stop the cars going across the road. And I thought, yeah, mate, you can be really happy that I did SBSM and I learned to follow my impulses. Otherwise, I would be dead right now. You know, it would be a very different situation. And more recently, I was receiving a phone call from a friend about their diagnosis in the hospital. We were expecting it to be cancer, and they phoned, and I noticed my awareness went from my ear right down into my feet, felt my feet on the floor, came back up to the awareness in my ear again. Then I heard the news. But those things have just become so automatic in my daily life that it's just been remarkable. And I would say the beta training, the SED, what this did for me was it solidified my nervous system. It gave me a maturity of my nervous system that I didn't have before. It's kind of like the more regular contact with you and the group, all of us together, it gave my nervous system some kind of extra solid foundation. And the fine tuning of the skills that we'd learned in SBSM, in beta, really gave me a confidence that I didn't have before. And just to add a little bit on, you know, the training is really to become a practitioner. And during this time of doing the beta module with you, Irene, people were asking me if I would work with them. And I was a little bit fixed on, I need a certificate to kind of say people will believe me that I can do this work. Anyway, recently, I was asked again, and I finally said yes. And we had our first session. So I had my first client. And what an incredible experience it was. She kept saying to me how safe she felt with me and how understood. And at the end of the session, she was just in tears, because in an hour, we had made more progress in that 1 hour than she'd made in 4 years of all the therapies that she'd been doing. And afterwards, when we finished, I cried, because I was just so moved at what I was able to offer her, the safety I was able to offer her, and what I had learned was then there for her. And it was a really remarkable gift, and it's so nice to sort of tell you this. But the overall thing I would say was, once you've done your work, that's it. You've done your work. People can tell. You know, I haven't done any advertising or anything like this, although I think this is important too. But people kept asking me because they could feel that I'd done my own work. And so this is the most important message, to do your own work. And then, as you say, you become this pure, clean container to actually be there for somebody else, to feel what they need, to follow your impulses. Yeah, just remarkable. And I'm so grateful, so grateful.
Thanks, Samantha. I just want to really highlight what you said at the beginning. What led you to feel all the old symptoms, or the internal fight, flight, freeze, was you being safe in your living situation. And I really want to make sure people got that, because that might seem a bit counterintuitive. But until we have more safety, it is very difficult for the old dysregulations and traumas to come up and out. They won't come out when we're going at a high pace. And then when we slow down and we really listen and we get that connection, this is what can occur. So I just wanted to really highlight that, because that's super important. And also how quick, Samantha, you went from sitting there with your feet in the bucket of water, and all you could do was one of my simple exercises on my site in 2020, I think it was, to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. It was 2018 when I got sick, 2019 when I did Smartbody SmartMind, and now it's 2024. And I can't believe the change in me, and also in my relationships. You know, now I understand why people act the way they act. It's like having a pair of glasses on and just seeing, wow, that's because of trauma. That's because of trauma.
Yeah.
Helps me care about people a lot more, because I understand them a lot more. Like, it's just brilliant.
Yeah. Super. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you followed your impulse and didn't get crushed by a house. Very good. Okay, we got to laugh about it, right? It's like that was just such a great example. Sophia.
Hello. Can you see and hear me? Hello. Yeah, okay. Okay. So I joined Smartbody SmartMind last year. So I just went through it just one time. And although I've been in this work for a couple of years, almost 3 years by now, I trained as a trauma therapist about 3 years ago. And my journey has been pretty much like a roller coaster. I have a background of pretty much lifelong complex PTSD, I think, with all the symptoms and all the massive dissociation, which used to be almost like my middle name. And I also noticed recently, I realized it became so evident that my entire family, that's the calling card, dissociation about everything and each other. So it's been really tough to notice anything in my body in general, to notice the effect of something that I ate or a supplement that I took, or any differences. And of course, all the memory problems, trouble recalling stuff. So as soon as I started with the training, I went I studied under a person called Caroline Strawson, and she recommended that I look to your material, and I absolutely did. And it felt like your teachings, although by that time I had done a lot of certifications and a ton of studying and a ton of binge watching of all the things trauma, it felt like SBSM and all your YouTube material was filling in the gaps, like literally filling in the gaps of every possible question I ever had about this kind of topics. And basically it was so affirming and validating, and like light bulbs 24/7. Every time I was watching a video, I'm like, oh my God, she nailed it. Oh my God, she nailed it. It's like, it was incredible. It was impressive. And what really stood out is that I didn't notice anybody else doing the same thing. So I said, that's the way I have to go. I'm going to stick with this channel. And this is how I took the plunge with the 21 days and then SBSM, and eventually the practitioner training, the beta. And I haven't looked back since. I am super happy. And although, of course, this whole journey has made me feel and notice a very distinctive divide between myself and the people who have done the work and not done the work. So it feels like before it was kind of like, yeah, okay, normal people. Oh, why did they do that? Why did they do that? Now I'm like, I feel it. As soon as they open their mouth and say something, I really feel the difference. So this has made me a tiny bit more lonely. But at the same time, it's very rewarding, because this work has helped me start noticing things, because up until that point, I had intuitively had a basic grasp of the principles, like following your impulse, for example, a very basic one for me. But I didn't know. I was just following my intuition and basically my impulse. So I knew the people, knowing them when I saw them in SBSM and we worked on it extensively on beta, I was like, okay, I was not crazy. That's a great thing. And I let it expand and take shape. And honestly, I think it almost brought me to feel a different flavor of consciousness. So from where I used to be, completely functionally frozen, completely, to feeling the thaw, literally feeling the thaw every day. And so I decided to let it expand, and it's literally everyday changes. So my relationships have improved. My plants are thriving. I was so surprised. I saw one of your videos about the plants, and I'm like, yeah, my plants are thriving. I used to have them all rot on me. And then I learned the value of slowing down, because along with complex PTSD, some of you might know that there is a lot of adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue syndromes, and a ton of autoimmune stuff. I still have issues with my adrenals, not so much as before, thyroid issues and all of that. So I learned through SBSM the value of slowing down, of being intentional about noticing things without changing them. Because one of my standard things to do in the past was like to jump on things and to react, to change, to intervene, or to problem solve. But that was a trauma response. It was not coming from health every time. So I learned the value of slowing down and resting, taking rest, taking the time, because I was like, go, like workaholic. So I burned out in 2016, and I started having the energy levels of a healthy 80-year-old. Although I was like 35 then, like 34 then. So yeah, I am much better now. And about the beta training, the practitioner training, I do believe that it kind of gives you the missing pieces of the puzzle. And I know that I said that before, but because by now I think I am quite familiar with a lot of what is out there in terms of trauma training or somatic training and all the things. I believe that this training is the umbrella that encompasses so much of the work, plus everything else that is not included anywhere else. So I feel very grateful that I found my way to this space and I met all of you, and I'll keep doing the work.
Thank you, Sophia. And just to be clear, the beta training that these 9 SBSM alum have gone through, it has just been a beta, meaning we haven't completed a full training. But what is very important to stress is by just doing the first segment was more 10 weeks, the second one was 12, we lengthened it, is what can actually occur in a short period of time when we're all speaking the same language and there's foundation on board. And I have been through many trainings as a student, as an assistant, more than I can tell you. And as an assistant, what was most frustrating, and this is just fact, was when you had a higher level class where people were all over the map in their regulation and also in their understanding of the theory. And it did hold things back because the common denominator was not equal. And so while, you know, Samantha, Amy, Sophia, Camilla, you're up next in a second, while they're all unique and they all have unique histories, like this group of people have such amazing histories, we're still all speaking the same language. And then that makes it such that when those of you who choose to continue to be practitioners you will have your own unique handwriting and how you express this sciintuitive material. It isn't going to be like getting your teeth cleaned, you know, where in that world of dental hygiene, you want the person to clean your teeth kind of the same, right? Like it's all very similar. There's a way to do it. But with this work, because you're working with another human or a group of humans, there's so much diversity and have those people show up. And like Samantha had said, now that she is regulated in her system and wants to do this work, due to, I think, the quantum world, people find her, people find you. Like there is something that will occur in the system where, okay, yeah, I'm ready to do this work, people will find you. So thank you for the first 3 that have spoken. And Camilla, you're up next. Let us know where you are, what you do, and your story.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Camila. I am Russian, living in Italy. When Irene in the beginning asked how we found SBSM, when we did it, etc., I started to be a little bit worried because I was trying to remember the problems that I have, like health issues, like some anxiety, depression, some disorders, something like that. And I couldn't understand why I was so anxious in that moment right now during this call. And then I realized that I'm starting to forget about these problems thanks to SBSM. So I have to really remember where I was, what was the place I was in, because I used to be very nervous. I suffered from anxiety, from depression, and it all started when I I had my daughter in 2017, and a couple of years after that, I started having these panic attacks, and I couldn't understand why. And my background is that I was born in Russia, was raised in Russia, and lived my life there until I was 23. And I have ACE score, if you're familiar, Adverse Childhood Experiences score of 4. So this is when things start getting difficult. So I have higher risks of health issues, of psychiatric disorders, etc. And it all started to come out when I immigrated to Italy. Great climate, I was happy. I'm married to a wonderful man. I had a daughter. I had a wonderful job, and it all was great. And as Samantha said before, it was similar. My experience was similar to hers, because as soon as I felt good, really good in life, my container, my emotional, mental, physical container widened, and all the trauma that I have been suppressing for the first 25 years of my life, it all came out. And I was suffering from panic attacks daily, and high anxiety and depression. And in 2022, last year, I started SBSM. And as Sophia said, it filled in the gaps. It gave me a great, so to say, housekeeping of my life. It feels like I cured every little thing, every little problem that I had before. It feels strange talking about that, because I truly feel great now. And I even don't recognize myself, because the person I was before was struggling so much. I had very strong chronic fatigue, and I still suffer from it. I get tired easily. In fact, I'm very tired right now. I must say. Maybe you can notice, because it's really difficult for me to talk in a foreign language, even in my mother tongue language, when I'm very tired. And now it's 9 p.m. here in Italy. But before SBSM, I would instantly get a panic attack or an anxiety attack, because I was so tired in the evening. And when I had to do something, I had an appointment, or just to, I don't know, at work, I would instantly get a panic attack, because I didn't have capacity. And what SBSM gave me is how to correctly widen your capacity in life, any kind of emotional capacity, how to deal with big emotions, physical capacity, how to literally be strong in life, how to make it till the evening, because life is difficult. You have to be strong, physically strong, to mental capacity, empathy, how to understand yourself and other people. I'm a mental health counselor, by the way. Yeah, there are so many things that I can say that my mind goes from one to another. So yeah, if you have questions, it will be easier for me to guide myself through my talk.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Camila. Just what is your actual training in? So you're a mental health counselor. What was your education when you were younger, quote unquote? Because you're still young.
Yeah, it was counseling. Yeah. I went to counseling school, so general psychology, and that's, I can say a lot about psychology field. Like it's if I start, I don't know how to end this conversation. Anyway, as Sophia said, and everyone else before me, your work, Irene, your work, anything, I mean, your website, your articles and your videos and 21 Day and SBSM, they just the missing puzzles, the missing pieces that every field needs. Would it be medicine? Will it be psychology, psychiatry, psychotherapy? Because it's the foundations that you can't ignore. You cannot move into a house with a really, really bad foundation. You cannot, but many people do. And in my work as a mental health counselor, I constantly, almost everyone, every client that comes to me is someone who wants to solve very big problems right now. They want it all right now solved, and they don't want to think about foundation because it's something, it's boring, and they don't understand how it could be connected, like a neurosensory exercise. How could this be connected to their say relationship problems? Like if you are not feeling yourself, how are you supposed to understand someone else if you don't have an understanding of how you feel, etc. And another great thing is that being a parent, it's SBSM changes everything. It changes your parenting because it gives you the foundations. And when you raise a little human being, you give them the foundations of, you give them the physical experience of existence. I don't know. It's, I'm talking in these terms that are maybe too big, but
that's okay.
This is what SBSM is for me. And the thing that I wanted to mention is that I always get back to the program when something happens that I don't have any control over, like in my life, when something happens that I just can't deal with, I can change it. Like 1 year ago, I just started in March, and the war happened. I was in a very bad place, and it was the right moment for me to stay grounded, to live my experience, my reactions, because I'm living, I'm a human being. I have reactions. Even if I mentally know that something happens that I can change. Or the most recent experience was last week when my daughter started elementary school last week, and I was prepared. We were prepared, and everything was good. And after the first day, I got back home, and I had this nervousness. It wasn't even anxiety, but it was like this feeling in your chest that you just can't. When moments like this happen, I go to the website, SBSM website. I open whatever I feel like I have the impulse to open. And I do, usually it's a neurosensory exercise, and it helped a lot because it even helped me understand what was the feeling that I had, because it widens my capacity, and so I understand myself much better. And I had this feeling that the system took my baby, and I was very angry. And we were very prepared for school. And I had this feeling, oh my God, the elementary school is obligatory. I can't just make her stay at home. And she's just 6 years old. And I know that. And it's a great school. Everything is great. She has friends. But the feeling that I had, my internal experience was so intense that I just couldn't carry on with my day. And I had to stop. And for 40 minutes, it's not much. I did the exercise, and I let myself feel what I felt and express it. It was anger. I was very angry for no reason, in quotes. But internally, I had a reason. And so in these things, I just manage myself better. I manage my life better. And yeah, as I said in the beginning, I feel like my problems, they start to really disappear, but like really honestly disappear. And that's great.
Thank you. Thank you, Camila. And lovely share about your daughter going to school. It makes sense that you'd be angry, because yes, that makes sense. So what I want to just add to that, and then next up is Lena, is many mothers or fathers wouldn't know that they're angry, and then this is where they might then treat their children poorly because it's connected to their children, but it's your own process of a mom. My baby's leaving, she's leaving the nest, she's going into the world. That's a big shift in that parent-child bond, and the fact that one can process that on their own. You didn't need to go to a therapist. You just noticed it, something was off, you did the exercises, oh, anger, process the anger, and then everything settles after that.
Exactly.
It's hard to convey how much that will influence her life as a child growing up, to a degree that's impossible to measure. So I'm really glad you shared that. I know that there'll be some parents that really relate to that as well. Thank you. Lena.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Lena from Paris. And by the way, Samantha, I love your t-shirt, L'amour. So my story, I think like it was a dear friend of mine who made me discover SBSM. And we met through a mind-body program. So I had like a little bit of education towards feeling our sensations, not being resistance. But I was always stressed out, you know. I didn't know my body, and I was feeling my sensation, but through a lens of fear, you know. And so, yeah, that was really difficult because I was entertaining the fear and so pain, because like I had like debilitating anxiety pretty much all my life, woohoo! But I also had 4 years of pain, chronic pain, like neuroplastic pain. So I couldn't walk for 4 years, and I had like the pain everywhere. And of course, like I was in hospital and everything, but like I didn't know what it was, and I felt like I was going to die, you know. So through the mind-body tools and then SBSM, I discovered a lot of tools to not fear the feelings, like actually accepting the feelings, you know, not being resistant. And like, I don't know, like it changed my neural pathways, I would say, because I was feeling the feeling and it was okay then. And so like my brain was less hyperactivated, I would say. And so it was not a vicious circle anymore, but like more of a virtuous circle, which was better. And what I would say about SBSM, like it was what I loved was the education. The education was absolutely fantastic, because we always like hear a lot about nervous system regulation, but like we actually don't know what it is, and there are a lot of miscommunication, misleading information. So I was really lost, like, what is this, blah blah blah. We hear a lot of this, and with you it's like, okay, we know what it is now, we have the truth, you know, like. And I was hearing all your, of course, your YouTube videos like everyone else, and of course like all the SBSM, because I did it 3 times, I think. And so yeah, the education was really good. And what I would say also is like developing the interoception, because as I said, like I think I had like kind of an interoception, like a internal perception, but it was like, I don't know, polluted with my fear, so it was not authentic. And so I think with your program I learned like authenticity towards the feelings. And so of course like the intuition is far more developed. I know myself, like I can hear my body, I can feel my body, what it wants. So it's like I'm kind of the best friend of my body. It's never perfect, of course, like there is life challenges, you know, but like it's, yeah, we are a team with my body now. Like I know I'm responsible for my body, and of course that is changing the life. And especially because I will be probably a mama, you know, someday, I will have a baby. And so I'm so happy, because like when I see my lineage, I'm like, fuck. But like it's not that I'm perfect, of course, but I'm like, okay, so I have some tools. At least I would try my best with my awareness, you know, like some different perceptions, and so I'm happy about that. And regarding the so I'm not like still a practitioner, like a coach or anything, but I'm sure like I would go towards that, because I would do your program, your Scientuitive School, and I'm waiting for it. And I have a podcast in France, and so it really helped me to be more connected to everything, to my, like, to orient better. Because at first, like in the first time I heard like the tools of orienting and everything, I was like, yeah, okay, I think I do know, but like I didn't integrate the orienting process before doing the beta module, so like 4 times of it, you know. And so I'm far more confident, I would say, like even if I'm not speaking my native language. And Camila, like we know it's difficult, like it's 9 p.m. for me too, I'm like tired, you know, but I don't know, like it changed your confidence. You're like, okay, let's be authentic, like so less pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's I'm just like looking if I wanted to. Yeah, no, really, like trusting your body. I think it's really important. Like be a team with your body. Like I love this.
That's a good way of putting it, Lena. And I got to say, you and Camila are speaking English way better than I would speak French or Russian at 9 p.m. So yes, de rien. You're doing very well.
Thank
and I'm
you.
sure everybody can understand you. What you said to Lena about how it wasn't until you got deeper into the beta, into the Scientuitive beta, that the orienting really became integrative. I think that was true for many people. And the reason why is it's like we did it over and over and over again. And the repetition of going back to the basics. And for those who are interested in learning with me through SBSM, of course, that's where you have to start. And then that future practitioner role. And we can talk about this once we get through everyone. What we did in beta wasn't like crazy intellectual theory, right? It was really simple what we did. And it was almost shockingly remedial and simple, but it was powerful when you really have to integrate the main basic practices of orienting, following impulse, noticing breath, connecting to resource, connecting to potent posture. It is really a task to bring those in at all stages of the training, life, practice. So I wanted to mention that because SBSM is not something that you just do once. A lot of people are worried that they won't get through all the material in the 12 weeks. And I'm sure all the alum here could say, oh no, that wasn't me either. I don't know anyone who has gotten through the 12 weeks in one full go, along with the Q&A calls, the training calls. Even my most advanced senior practitioners have gone through Smartbody SmartMind, and they have needed to take their time to go through the curriculum. So it's more than just 12 weeks. I really want to stress that. It's a curriculum that you will work with for many, many years. Monique, you're next on my list, my dear. There you are. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I'm in London, and yeah, I echo a lot of what everyone said. My personal journey of healing, trying to understand suffering, why I suffer, why my family suffers, and everyone around us. Probably about 30 years or so, I guess, to my mid-teens. And my sort of survival response was quite hidden. And it was quite confusing because I was really confident on the outside. Like right now, I'm actually quite nervous, even though I'm used to talking to people for my profession. I teach yoga. But as soon as like there's just a few unknown people, or I care really deeply about something like I do about this, then my perfectionism and my like sort of things that hold me back, they kind of come in, and I think that's what makes me a bit nervous. Anyway, just wanted to share that. So yeah, so my teens, I had like, you know, on the outside, everything was perfect. Well, not perfect, but like, you know, happy, confident, lots of friends, did well at school. I got up on stage, acting, debating, blah, 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 blah. And on the inside, I was quite miserable. And as I say, part of the misery was also just the confusion about the misery, like why, you know. I had a lot of shame about my body. I turned to like binge eating, binge drinking. I developed bulimia. And I think that was the real thing that really just like was like in my face, like you actually have, because all the other stuff was like you could kind of write off as like normal. And then the bulimia was very much like, this is not normal. So that was actually a blessing because it kind of got me really into this. And also I was always interested in, you know, the big questions in life, like what are we here for? And I think this is what we're here for. I think this is what we're here for, is to learn and to overcome suffering and to help each other through it. And that was one of the biggest things in both SBSM and SED was this, this community. Like someone said they feel lonely. Like I felt lonelier before SBSM because I mean, my whole yoga journey was about the last 20 years. The first 5 of that was actually quite a lot of harmful yoga. I don't know if anyone does yoga here. I don't want to talk too much on that, but if anyone's interested, I can give some examples. But I did eventually find something that was, you know, the real deal. And it's actually really similar to what we do in SBSM. But like the others were saying, it's like all the gaps get filled in. For me, it's almost like this whole journey has been like piecing together a mosaic, like that's like lost a whole lot of pieces. And then SBSM just like was this major kind of like integration of all of that. And yeah, so I kind of felt quite isolated throughout my more recent, like when I did a 3-year apprenticeship in the yoga that I teach now. And yeah, I almost felt more and more isolated because I just wasn't relating to people in the same way. Like I didn't want to talk about the things that people care about, like stuff and their, you know, their latest holiday, which is nice, but you know, or people would kind of figure out that I was a good listener and then I just get everything. And then it's like, you know, it becomes a therapy session and that's, yeah. So I would say that SED was like the first time, especially through our partnerships, because that's when we got to know people one-on-one, where I just felt like absolute reciprocity between 2 people, where like you're sharing things deeply, but you're taking responsibility for your own stuff. And that was just, and as I say, the reciprocity, like you both are listening, you're both contributing, reflecting. That was powerful. So I felt more, yeah, less lonely. And also since SED, like I've done some things which I think are related to having done SED, which is like, you know, going out there and taking up tango, because don't necessarily want to talk to people. I just want to, you know, like actually like have that body interaction and that, oh, the words left me, but the social engagement. Yeah. And it's just so interesting feeling my body and then in response to different other people's bodies. And I would also add to what people were saying about when people can sense or people know that you've done the work. I would add to that even if they don't know that they sense it, I can sense my effect on other people because of my regulation, which is really powerful. But yeah, I would say firstly, with just to go back to SBSM, the immediate shift was that I knew a lot of this stuff about, you know, orienting and impulse, and, you know, I'd been given a lot of good information and I thought I was applying it, and I just really wasn't actually applying it. I was kind of, you know, doing my yoga practice and then rushing through the day to get to my next yoga practice, and it was kind of keeping things cool, but yeah. And so SBSM, I just really started applying the basics, and yeah, and that just started changing things. And I just felt like I was actually just more present in the moment and living and like just prioritizing my experience above and beyond everything else. Like, didn't matter if I didn't get as much done. I was actually just enjoying life more. And then with SED, I would say my big realization was kind of connected, but I was just over-resourcing for a long time by all the tools that I had from the yoga, especially with the breathing. I would let big emotions through. So like if I had some kind of crisis or a breakup or whatever, the big emotions would easily come through. I've got no shame in crying in front of people, that sort of thing. But it was the anxiety, like the low level anxiety or dread or like things like that, that I would be like, oh no, this is inconvenient. I'm just going to breathe through you. And I know that in some ways, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, because maybe I was expanding my capacity, but it also just meant that I was a bit stuck, like a plateau. So SED has changed that a lot. So now I just, you know, I let things come up and they'll bubble up to the surface and then they get set free. And I'm so much more intuitive now with my yoga practice and with my teaching. Just the informing people, as well as just the way that I teach the things I always taught. The language has changed. And I remember consciously thinking, because before I did SBSM, just becoming aware of, you know, more permissive, suggestive, open-ended instruction. And I remember thinking, but that's just going to take too much time. And I don't want to be talking so much. And I thought, no, it's good enough to just say at the beginning of the class, everything's an option. And then I realized, like, through being guided by Irene and all of those exercises, just like how important it is to actually have that guidance, because our habits are so embedded. Like, we actually need, and I find like I've needed to do exercises over and over again to really access something a bit deeper and to change things and how I relate to things. So yeah, I also might have spoken all over the place, but
no. Thank you, Monique. What you said, I want to highlight something. You mentioned that you had the tools of, say, orienting and following impulse, but you actually weren't really applying them all the time. It's hard to like convey what that means when we haven't gone through the process that all of you have, but it becomes a living of this work rather than a just doing of the work, right? And I think you said it perfectly. You went from one yoga class, you were present, and then you rushed off to another. You probably went into more survival stress, and then you resourced yourself with the yoga. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you said that now when you teach, you're just more open and there's more suggestion, that's really how to guide a really good movement class. It isn't so much specific poses and postures. Well, of course, you're going to do that in yoga, but there's more openness for exploration. And as you said, improvising within the container of that practice. And I know from teaching as much as I have, when you have that open-endedness and you're teaching from yourself, you never get bored and you always have something to teach, even if it's the most basic thing. So I'm really glad you mentioned that, because there's probably people here who are teachers and practitioners and they're wondering, how is this going to help me? So next is Sophie, and then David, and then Aaron. And Sophie, I'm going to preface what you're about to share, your history, what you do, with a question that Sarah Miller posted in the chat. I'm just going to read it. You don't have to start by answering this, but I want to like plant this question into the field. So Sarah asks, I've been studying many of these modalities that Irene has combined, and my concern is this will be more of a review than training. I suppose my question is, for those who have an advanced level of knowledge surrounding all of this, would I still benefit? So Sophie, I know you're a PhD and you're an SEP, so you can bring that question into your share as you wish to, as you want to integrate that.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wrote a little bit of a response in the chat, but I'll elaborate.
Great.
I would say a resounding, this would be still an amazing, amazing program. Yes, I have my PhD, I have 2 masters, and I've done somatic experiencing training, as well as a lot of other training. I am definitely a glutton for the trainings. And I think one of the main things for me, especially with SBSM, was that I took SBSM for myself, not for being a practitioner. So I will say that as a groundwork, that for me, SBSM had such a beautiful emphasis on gaining your own regulation and expanding your own capacity within your nervous system. So I just think that's beautiful, and something that has been lacking to a certain degree, I'll say, in the other programs that I've taken. Not that it hasn't been addressed, but it hasn't been like such a major focus. It's been sort of like, yes, we're doing this training. And like, even for my PhD, we had to do extra hours where we had to do something where we were working with a practitioner. But it was kind of this like sidebar off over here, and we could do whatever we wanted, and you just had to get somebody to sign off on it, and it was helpful. I will definitely say that. But SBSM that's its focus, as far as I can tell, that it's not necessarily for practitioners to then be able to do this work. It's for us to really be able to work on ourselves. And that's why it's open to everyone, not just practitioners. And so that was extremely helpful. I also think Irene has such an incredible ability to take very complex topics and make them really accessible. So for me, I feel like it really helped my languaging with clients, or even just sort of like everyday people, and also really explain better of like what I do or what I want to do, what the purpose of this work is. Because I think as we go deeper more into this work, I found it was harder for me to kind of like take myself back out of not knowing anything, and to kind of go back to basics and to be really clear in sort of the foundations and be able to explain it better. So I'll say those were all really helpful. I will say with the SED, that was also a piece of it, of it's still, at least in my perspective, still really focused on our own capacity, our own regulation. And then as it's been echoed in so many people saying it, it's like us gaining that brings more people in. It's a resonance, it's a frequency that goes out, and we can be with people in a different way. So yeah, I think that is my answer to that part so far. We'll see if more comes forward. But I'll say with my experience or my journey, I started off in being brought up in a spiritual community, and which was wonderful and great, and honestly kept me alive, because I started with extreme depression about age 3, and nothing helped in terms of relieving what I was experiencing within me. But the foundations of the spiritual principles kept me alive. So it kept me from doing anything to actually end my life. But it didn't actually shift my experience of life. So it kind of kept me going, but it didn't raise me in a certain way. And in my mid-20s, so I had done my first master's in spiritual psychology and was in a very deep depression, because in my understanding, I thought that that program was going to solve all my problems and life was going to be sunshine and rainbows and butterflies forevermore. And as a budding 24-year-old, I went, oh my God, why do I still not feel good? And by fluke, of course, I was tricked into seeing someone who does body work. For me, psychology, so I had also done, in undergrad, I'd done psychology, psychoanalysis, philosophy, and then the spiritual psychology, and all of it was very, very heady. It was great theory, it was great principles, but it completely lacked my body. And my way of dealing with trauma is to dissociate. So it was perfect. It worked so well. It gave me sort of that out of, oh, just go meditate. Just go leave your body, in the sense of not meditations of like body focused meditations, but just dissociate from it and everything will be fine. So for me, that was why I wasn't feeling any shifts in my day-to-day experience. And so I ended up in this body work, I'll say community, because I ended up training in this body work and really getting deeply into it. And it was all meridian based. And I had this sort of like, oh my God, the body is the key. This is what I've been missing. This is what I needed, was to be able to go into the pain, was to be able to go into my body. And my second master's and PhD is in depth psychology with an emphasis in somatic studies. And so from that perspective, the body really holds so much of this unconscious material. And then going on to doing somatic experiencing and NARM, and I'm forgetting other names of the programs, but all of this, it's like really bringing the body so deeply into it, because the body is what experiences our life. And that huge shift for me was what created the shift for me to no longer deal with deep depression. I mean, I just don't have it. It's not a thought that comes in anymore. As others have said, it's sort of like hard to sort of think back to those times, because it just feels so a little bit foreign. I kind of talk about it in sort of chapters of my life. And so for me, having done a lot of study in this, as I'll come back to what I said in the beginning, SBSM, Irene's work, and then SED really solidified it so much for me in terms of really getting it in my personal body, and very much being able to express that to others in a clearer, more grounded, more regulated state. So
thank you, Sophie. And what I want to really highlight about what you said at the beginning was you did SBSM for yourself personally. And as you said, not that the somatic trainings that are out there don't suggest you need to do your personal work. From my experience, it's not enough. And so we always have to start with our working on ourselves first. And when we can do that, the learning of a practice, an apprenticeship, just comes that much easier. I don't want to say faster necessarily, but I do believe that if we can start with these base level foundations, as Camila said, the foundations when we then do go and learn the skills, the techniques, the things, it just falls into place more because we're not battling with our body and our brain. It just happens much more easily. So thank you for that. The other thing, we're scheduled to just go for 90 minutes. I don't have anything right after this. So if we do go over and we take questions, I'm going to stay. If other panelists can stay a little longer, that's great. If you can't, that's okay. So just wanted to name that. David, you are up next, and then Aaron.
Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm good.
I'm the lone man on the panel, I noticed. It's fun. It's funny, actually. I've in my and by the way, I want to echo what Sophie was saying a little bit about the whole spiritual communities and doing that whole, well, I'm just going to meditate my way through this. And I was completely dissociated and just off in la la land, and I felt fantastic. Complete and utter dysregulation. But I'm David Magnus. I am on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, and went through Smartbody SmartMind 2017. It's about 6 years ago now, I think we've calculated. I was in the process of weighing up doing yet another program that was probably yoga and breathwork based. That probably would have been really, really good, but something I've done before, so I could have done it more bypassing and more forcefully controlling my nervous system in ways that weren't in the long run very useful. So thankfully, Irene at the time was very, very gracious with her time to help me make a decision to kind of take a leap of faith, because that's one of the things I would say about anybody if you find yourself on this call or watching the recording. If there is this sort of leaning in towards this work, and even if there's resistance, like, oh, I don't need it, or it scares me, then you need it even more. So it's kind of that bit of truth that maybe you don't want to hear, that if there's a resonance to the work, there's probably a need for it. So I think me going through, and I laughed a lot when people said going through the work, and oh, I'm going to go through this perfectly, because I'm a recovering perfectionist, right? So when I jumped on board initially, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to dial this in. I'm going to go through, hit all the lives, hit all the Q&As, do everything on pace. And as soon as I kind of fell off the pace a little bit, it was challenging because this perfectionism kind of kicked in. But thankfully, I get lifetime access, and it just keeps on rolling. And as I continued to sign up and go through, there was more and more opportunity to get deeper and deeper into the program until I finally completed it and integrated it. But in terms of history and what I was overcoming in my own life, I grew up with a lot of elephants in the room in my family, a lot of shutdown, a lot of dysregulated parents. My dad is a very old school British engineer, so that makes him doubly shut down and not open to much emotional connection. My mother is quite the opposite, and a people pleaser and looking to get herself involved in everyone's business in a very, very loving way, but boundaries didn't exist. So it was a challenge, really a challenge to navigate childhood. And I came out with CPTSD, some attachment wounding, and some all other kinds of goodness in terms of mental health concerns, depression, anxiety, eventual substance abuse. Is just a litany of, I guess, unofficial diagnoses, but also behaviors. And I think one of the other panelists really spoke about becoming overly resourced. So I was overly resourced, but sometimes not all resources are equal. Some of them are, you'd say, negative based. I steered towards some negativity, some escapism in terms of all its many, many forms. And I always like to say escapism is $1 trillion industry. Pick your poison. There's just so many options. So when you start to you sort of carve away, okay, what are my positive resources here? At the one, maybe I can just utilize those more. And then as I start to build more of a capacity and a regulation within my system, maybe I even need those less. So that's what I did. That's the journey. I feel far more authentic than I've ever felt. And that's still carving itself out. I think one of the things that I did, if you kind of lose yourself in really boundaryless families, you become an adult and you're just like, who the hell am I? I don't even know. It's like everyone's been making decisions for me. I've been trying to live up to expectations in every corner. And that the way I was taught at home spilled over to teachers, bosses, peers, friends. Like, oh, I'm just going to become that person. Like, copy what they do. So I didn't really know who David Magnus was. And to be honest, it's still sort of revealing itself, but it's a really, really good process. So that would be one thing I would invite anybody as a plus to this kind of work. The world doesn't need another version of whoever we're trying to copy. The world needs you. The world needs an authentic version of you. That's why you're here. So I remind myself of that all the time. And while we might want to emulate certain attributes that we see of our heroes and mentors, we have to do it in our own way. And again, that's really what this work has offered for me. Slowing down, really, really assessing, really boundarying up in ways that is still kind of uncomfortable, I will admit at times, to create boundary and maybe feel like I'm being not a good person, you know, that people-pleasing aspect of my mother creeping in. But things are good. Things are moving, even though they're not always good. There's intense emotions that I have to deal with. I feel very tooled up, very regulated, a lot more resiliency, a lot more capacity. So if I do get rocked, and I do still get rocked emotionally, I come out of it way quicker, way quicker, and with more valuable insight, and things are good. Things are really good. And on a side note, is like one of the things I've always wanted to do, being a very, very skinny runt of a kid, is be consistent with fitness and nutrition. And I finally crossed that hurdle. I know, right? Thank you, Irene. I've been consistent now, eating well for myself and consistent fitness routine. I will say that I'm actually changing my physique. I'm certainly no Arnold Schwarzenegger, nor will I ever be. But there has been a positive change, and that's just not me looking in the mirror, but that's spilled over to so many aspects of my life in terms of confidence, positivity, again, that sort of groundedness, really groundedness. I was really ungrounded before, holy cow, and presence. I think that's one of the things that in my work and working with people on a sort of a practitioner level, I'm blurring the lines between practitioner and coaching a little bit without falling out of scope of practice. But one of the things I do get offered by people is like, wow, you're present, you're here with me, which is a beautiful thing. And I don't know if anyone's ever noticed, but when you have someone in front of you that is there with you, like truly there with you, it hits different. It really hits different. So people will respond to you differently if they say, wow, you're really here with me. You're not thinking about what you're going to say next, or you're not off in la la land. You're not watching the TV over my head. You're just here. And there's something about that. There's some real power to that. And I'm happy to say that I bring that to the table now, and continue to do the work. As far as practitioner, full-blown practitioner, even that's changing. I kind of came into this work as a business coach, and I steered away from it. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be a business coach anymore. I want to be a trauma specialist. And now as I move towards trauma specialist, the business coaching is sort of coming back in. So there may be a blend, because in all this life coaching and business coaching and online, there's a lot of dysregulation. I believe there's a lot of need for nervous system informed coaching in the business realm, because it's just, how does trauma get embedded? It's just too much, too fast. And in the world of personal development, there's a hell of a lot of that. So if we can get to, I always kind of jokingly call myself the slow down coach. I'm always telling my people to slow down. I'm like, yeah, I know it's counterintuitive. You're just going to slow down, but you're going to get more done. Just got to have a little faith. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. So yeah, it's been a really good journey so far. And I think I'm really just enjoying the journey more than being so goddamn destination focused. Oh my goodness, was I destination focused? And much like Sophie had said, once I get this thing, I'm just going to be great. Everything's going to be fantastic. But now that I've started to sort of enjoy the journey of this unfolding, of this sculpting, I think it's a sculpture, right? That I can sort of, be a little bit more allowing and be less focused on the destination. That's going to be the be all and end all, and I'm going to be just perfect when I arrive, because that's just not how it works. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Irene.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. And Erin, you're up next. I just want to follow up on a couple things David said, because first of all, awesome on the exercise nutrition thing. Yay. What I didn't mention is one of the projects that the beta students had was they had to do a self-care project for the time we were together. And it couldn't be anything meditation based or nervous system based. It had to be some kind of improvement of your food, your circadian biology, your sleep, your exercise. There were some people that were putting off getting certain medical procedures that they knew they really had to do. And again, as someone who's been in so many trainings, it is important for us as practitioners, coaches, whatever you want to call it, we have to be healthy. We can't just have the theory and know some tools. We need to be not just mentally, emotionally healthy, but physically healthy. Because when you're physically healthy, not only do you feel better, but you have more attunement to your body. And it's something that is very near and dear to my heart, because my background was initially in exercise science, in nutrition, in fitness. I'm not asking people, like David said, nobody needs to become Arnold Schwarzenegger. We don't need another Arnold, but we need that vigorous capacity, because when we are working with others, group or one-on-one, we need to be able to handle intense stuff and let it come through us and out like that. And the more physically fit and the more fueled and nourished we are, the easier, trust me, it is so much easier. We need to sleep well, all this kind of stuff. And I can tell that our group, our pod of folk, like there's just a vibe. I mean, you can see it. There's a vibrancy to them that we want in a practitioner. We want in a helper, in a coach, in a mentor. So it's very cool to me to hear those pieces of progress, David. Thank you very much. And yes.
Oh, one last thing.
Yeah.
One last thing, Irene. I did actually, and I kind of was, sometimes I avoid getting information. So I got some blood work done recently. Just because it seems recommended, right? And I get some blood work done. And I was like, the doctor was actually quite surprised because I was just like, essentially healthy as an ox, I think is the expression. But every marker was just like really, really bang on. So, and I honestly do credit the work, not only in nutrition and fitness and all that stuff, but that in this regulation that is allowing for what I'm doing to embed itself. So just wanted to add that in there too.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm someone who actually enjoys giving labs because it conveys what's actually occurring. And it made me so sad when my GP said, I'm her only patient who isn't on medication, myself and Seth. I'm nice. Like, wow. We're your only patients who aren't on some form of pharmaceutical medication. I was like, whoa, and I feel like I still have ways to go with my health. So that's the other thing, is we will become healthier in those deep, deep levels, which give us capacity when there is a stressor or there is a sickness or an illness. So thank you for sharing that. Erin, my dear.
Yes, hello.
You just have to come back. You were on our panel on Friday, and I'm glad you're here. So please share your story.
Yes, thank you for having me again, Irene. I just, couldn't help myself. I just love talking about this work so much. So, it's really interesting, like hearing everyone's stories and reflecting back on my own journey, like starting SBSM in 2020. I kind of forgot about this. It's like Camila was saying, you almost forget how bad it used to be once you've come so far. But I was reflecting on it, and I remember, Irene, when I first found you and started SBSM, I could only do your neurosensory exercises for about 5 to 10 seconds. And then I had to stop because I had, due to, I know I talked a bit on Friday, like due to very early trauma and being extremely sick as a baby, and then other complex traumas and relational traumas, I had spent my entire life so far out of my body, which is amazing because no one would have ever known that looking at me or interacting with me. But the best way I can describe it is I always had this sensation that I was either so shut down and numb and depressed that I couldn't feel anything, including my body, or I was so on the opposite end, frenetic and panicky and anxious that I was floating above it. And so never actually in it, in myself. And so when I started SBSM, I remember that it was so uncomfortable for me, these exercises that force you to get in your body. A part of me hated it and so much, but then another part of me just knew it was medicine somehow. And I knew it was so different than anything that I had ever tried. It just felt like what I was needing, even though it was so challenging. And I think part of the fact that it was challenging was proof of, this is work I haven't done, and this is what my body really needs to heal. And so, slowly but surely, between having a whole lifetime of extreme dysregulation, as well as since birth, all sorts of hundreds of extreme physical symptoms that would fluctuate constantly and were so debilitating, really, on both ends, like physical and mental, emotional. Just, chipping away at SBSM and the curriculum and all the exercises and learning about trauma, learning about the nervous system, I started to notice it was subtle. It wasn't, right away or all at once, but I just started to notice I had these little moments or glimmers of, wow, I think this is what it's like to actually realize I have a body and be inside my body, and also be aware of, as you teach, Irene, like my body on the chair or my body in this room, or noticing the environment around me rather than being so rushed and feeling like I'm so on edge and running all the time that I don't even notice where I am, or where my body is in regards to where I am. And so the changes just kept happening until, and I noticed too that there was suddenly so much more capacity to hold what I had experienced when I was so little. So there was suddenly this space within me that I'd never had before to feel into the terror, like the near-death experiences, all the illness I'd been through, the physical pain, relational pain, that suddenly I wasn't running from it anymore. I was just feeling it. And as someone said earlier, it was bubbling up and out rather than feeling it and then being so terrified of it that it would be pushed back down and suppressed and then just keep coming up over and over and over. And for me, that created this freedom in every area of my life. Like, it was hard to even, I tried to make a list and I was like, there's just way too much to even talk about. But in terms of like thriving in my relationships, having healthy boundaries, being able in an instant to have that healthy aggression, that anger come online that I had never felt for my whole life, of like, no, this is not okay. You will not say this to me, or you will not treat me this way. Like, that had been missing for so long. Even in terms of, I really was doing the work for myself for years, just for my own healing. But then eventually, I think when we're in our bodies long enough, we can start to really tune into our passions and what we feel we're here for. And so had enough capacity then to start doing all the somatic trainings, like somatic experiencing, and did a lot with polyvagal theory, somatic attachment work, parts work, traumatic stress studies. Like Sophie, I'm quite the glutton for trainings as well. But I didn't even have capacity to take the trainings, let alone even think about a career path that I was really passionate about, because the survival both in my body and mind was so deep and so debilitating. And I feel that's like sadly not something that's ever talked about in our society, is that for some people, it becomes so debilitating that you're just not able to function. And so I was so shocked in this really relatively short amount of time. Not only was I healing in mind and body, but also all of these areas of my life were just organically starting to, you know, fill out as a result of that, and starting to feel like I'm thriving rather than just trying to get through the day and manage symptoms and you know, shove down everything that's coming up. And so I'd say now today, and I guess with that, even in SED, I think what was so amazing about that, not just the knowledge that we gain, but the continual work on our own selves and our own nervous systems. Like I know, Irene, we did a one-on-one session together where we, you know, it was really eye-opening for me. I could sense how many years I had been feeling that floating out of my body. And ever since we did that session together, there was such an intense like dropping in for me. And I know you had mentioned like there was more color in my face and all that. And even to this, like months later, I have so much more color than I ever have.
You do.
So it's pretty incredible. So yeah, I'll end there. I know we're short on time.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And you know what you said, Erin, about actually your energy, because there's a question that came into the chat, which I'll mention in a second. But yeah, we did the tiniest bit of work together in beta, and it showed how when you have attunement and you understand the depth of education that we have, it's, I don't want to say it's easy, because the client, the student, has to feel intense things and you were ready for it. But we landed on the fact that your early years as a baby was a near-death experience, right? You mentioned this the other day. You were allergic to the formula that you were given as a baby, and you didn't eat properly for like the first year of your life. That's a huge near-death experience, but nobody had ever named it as such. And so not only was that a shock and a surprise, but it brought you out of that freeze in a way, right? And to this day, yeah, you have the color that you got back in March or April or whenever that was. So again, for those who are wanting to be practitioners or want to refine your practitionership, it is essential to understand the depths of this education, because it isn't enough to just say, oh yeah, she has emotional trauma, or oh yeah, she has birth trauma. The specifics are actually really important. And someone asked, to the panelists with low energy, how was it to do the Scientuitive beta program? I have rheumatoid arthritis, other chronic illnesses, and complex PTSD, and it makes me so slow while doing SBSM. So I'll say something, and then if any of the panelists want to chime in on this, we do need to have some base level regulation to start training in this work. You need to have the robustness to be on a call for a couple of hours. When Erin mentioned that she could only do a couple seconds of the neurosensory exercises, you know, if you had said that to us in your application, we wouldn't have taken you in as a student. We need to have some base level foundation to sit and to learn and to have some maybe discomfort, but to keep going. It's not an overriding, but it's a true window of tolerance. So if anybody has anything to chime in on that, Erin, it sounds like you might have something to say on that topic about capacity and taking in trainings. And then one thing I'll add to that, it is important to get that foundation, because what happens is if you go into professional training and you don't have the level of capacity that all these great people have, it's not that you're wasting your time and money, but you will float through that training being either dissociated or overactivated, and it won't sink in. It won't wire into your system. And that is a tragedy, because, you know, your resources are important and you don't want to waste your resources, i.e. your finances. So did you want to say something to that, Erin?
Sure. And that's specifically for the SED training they were. Yes. Yeah. So I would say that actually, looking back, my capacity was not, I mean, I had done, yes, years of the nervous system work, but overall was not overwhelmingly good, I would say. When I was taking it, I was having all these symptoms come up from malnutrition at birth. And so a lot of physical stuff, and still working on getting that big level of freeze, as Irene was saying, out of my system. And even so, the work is so really, I want to say, tangible and slow paced enough that for me, even having less capacity overall, I was really able to take it in at a rate that felt tolerable and good and bite-sized enough. And it actually ended up, by the end of the training, my capacity was so much more increased, and I was so much more confident in, like, when I started it, I remember thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do this work with people, because I still feel like disorganized in myself, you know, some of the time. And by the end of it, it was such a shift of, wow, I am not only so much more confident in being the expert of my own system, but I now feel confident that I can lead others through that, and also stay grounded, even if my own system has some level of dysregulation or some level of a physical symptom happening. I think that's the most important piece of this work, is that it brings us to the present moment, so that we're not being so dysregulated by having less capacity. It's like I can show up with the capacity that I have and know that I'm grounded and regulated, so that's enough. So hopefully that feels helpful.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Erin. I want to bring up a question about creativity, because I know we have some very creative folk here. I'm wondering, Sophia, if you could talk to this. Someone asks, my question is, will I be more creative if I do the work? And I'm going to say, because some people will say, well, there's all these amazing artists and musicians and people who are so creative, and yet they're so dysregulated and they're traumatized and they're addicts. What have you found? I know, and you can tell people just a little bit about what you do or have done. How do you see this work helping with the creative process?
Oh my God, I think I could be talking about this for hours on end. And
5 minutes.
Yeah, I think yeah, I will try to summarize it as best I can. So I have spoken with people, and perhaps I used to entertain or be open to the idea that being a struggling artist makes you create better art, and that the best art is created from pain and all that stuff. And I have found out that actually the opposite is true. Or if we accept that a great pain creates great art, and yes, we have seen the proof of that, it comes at a great cost. And I am not willing to pay that cost anymore. And I have spoken with a lot of artists that say, well, I don't want to do the work because it might make me less creative if I'm super regulated. And I'm like, it's going to be the exact opposite. I feel much more connected to my art, and I'm realizing how much I have been very unappreciative of my art, and just dismissing, because I was so dysregulated and so dissociated towards myself and my own art. So now I'm realizing how unfair I have been to my creative abilities. I have been a musician since I was a kid, like since I can remember myself, because of my grandpa, because he's a music teacher, multi-instrumentalist. So music has always been in my life. It's a part of myself, and now I'm through this work, I realize that not only will you be my, but
Sophia, we have a little delay on your
okay.
end. Little delay on your end.
I think I was. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, so I realized that not only will you be more creative, but you will discover different layers, the various different layers, and unprecedented grancy to creativity. And you literally, as soon as you get that feel, that different flavor of consciousness, that is the expression that popped up in my head. As soon as we started this panel, I cannot express it in a different way. This different flavor, like Deb Dana speaks about different flavors, it does have an impact. And I see better lyrics. I'm writing better lyrics. So I did not mention, apart from the various things I do, I am also a career musician. I have a band, a metal band, and I've always had a lot of insightful lyrics and a lot of personal journey kind of lyrics, supernatural lyrics, whatever. So it's kind of yeah, a mix and match. But I have found that my lyrics are flowing in a much better way, and they are more impactful. And the people have told me that the message is much more clear than before. It's even
Yes.
Mm.
Thank you.
So
yeah, there's a little delay, so I don't want to cut you off, but I will, just so that we're clear on that. But yes, the clarity in your creativity, there's more of it, and it's sustainable. How many people have we known over the years who don't make it as musicians? Their lives end, they overdose. Recently, one of my favorite musicians, Sinead O'Connor, left the earth plane. And I was like, no, out of all the people, why her? And yet she had so much trauma, so much tragedy. And I just don't think it has to be that way. I know it doesn't have to be that way. So yeah, very important, because as humans, we are meant to be creative. And when we're in survival stress, that creativity can't sustain. The one thing I want to end on, and I'll just mention it, we'll bring this to a close. First of all, thank you, all of you, for being here. Obviously, I've had way more connection with the 9 people that are here with us today than other SBSM members. It has been such a joy to connect at a deeper level with you all as students, as mentees, as peers, right, as future colleagues. And I hope you continue in the way that you should continue, in the way that your impulse follows you, you follow your impulse. As a reminder, everyone, to do a deeper level training with me, you must go through Smartbody SmartMind, and you must gain that regulation on board first. Don't have to be perfect, by no means. You don't have to be perfect, but there needs to be enough capacity to hold your own, and then be able to hold the energy and of a person or a group. We don't know when we will run the next level of training. The 2 cohorts that I've done, they're kind of locked in, and we're going to go to the next level in the next year. So we're figuring that out right now. I'm not someone that's just going to jump in and do a training for the sake of doing a training. I want it to be intentional. I want it to be foundational. And I want to make sure we're not wasting our time, right? We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So there's a creative process that I'm in the midst of moving through to try to figure out, how is this going to be different and not copying what's already occurred, right? I've had amazing mentors, amazing teachers, and we're always evolving and expanding here on Earth. And so that's sort of the purpose of the scientuitive training. For those who are super new, SBSM is really where to start. Timely registration is up until tomorrow, the 19th of September. This is the year 2023. So open to the end of the day, Tuesday, the 19th. And then we start officially with orientation call on Thursday, and then we start with the modules on Sunday. There's been some questions about things like, how does this help digestion, chronic fatigue? So many of those questions I've answered in other calls, other videos. The overarching answer is yes. And a lot of our alums have said, yep, my digestion has improved throughout doing this. And that is because the digestion is connected to the autonomic nervous system. So when we become more regulated, these internal systems get healthier and better. So, thank you, everyone. Maybe if the panelists can you guys all unmute yourself? I think you might be able to. We'll say goodbye with a little sound from your voices. And we will get this onto YouTube for those who want to watch this again. And for those that have been watching on this on YouTube, thank you for taking the time to sit and watch and learn from these amazing humans. Thanks, guys and gals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. See you on SBSM.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
See you on
everyone.
SBSM.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
We'll see you later. Ciao, ciao.